Hi everyone, I'm Travis, and today we're going to take a look at Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done. Crusaders is a game for 2 to 4 players from Tasty Minstrel Games. In Crusaders, players each lead a knightly order to spread their influence over Europe during the time of the Crusades. The goal in Crusaders is to gain the most influence, measured in tokens which you will collect during the game. The game ends when the last of a predetermined amount of influence has been gained collectively amongst the players. Players gain influence by crusading against enemies, mustering their armies, constructing buildings, and maintaining their territories. So why don't we take a look at how the game plays? In the game, each player will have their own player board to track their action points and hold all of their pieces. Each player will take a board, their action wedges, and all the assorted tokens and buildings that they will need for the game. One player will randomly put these tokens in an order, and then all other players will match that so that everyone is using the same starting order. Next, players will take 12 of these action point tokens and simply place 2 on each of their wedges. After players have their player board set up, each player will take 2 random knight order cards. The players can then choose one of these orders and place it face up in the top corner of their player board. This knightly order card will let the players know what special abilities they have, as well as the number of action points that they will start with. If a player has chosen a knightly order that starts with more or less of the action points, they will take or remove them as necessary. The main board is double-sided and is based on the number of players shown here. I'll be setting up this example using the 2-player side of the board. The number shown here indicates the amount of influence that should be in the influence pool. Count out the influence tokens and place them in reach of all players near the board. 1 Prussian and 1 Slav token are used here to indicate the strength, which I'll talk about a little later. The rest of the enemy tokens are randomly distributed on all spaces with a flag on the map, like this. There will be some pieces left over, and those will be returned to the box. Notice the difference between the Prussians and Slav pieces, which are shown with their symbols face up, and the Saracen pieces, which are shown with the symbols face down. This lets you know what reward can be chosen when defeating those enemies, which I'll mention a little later. Next, the building bonus tiles are placed face up in locations that match their shape. Note that some of these are placed in areas without enemy tokens. These here, which already have a permanent building token, don't get one of these extra pieces. In reverse player order, which you can randomly determine in any way you wish, players will place their starting pieces on one of the spaces matching the knight symbol. In a 2-player game, there are only the 2 spaces. In a 4-player game, there are more on the opposite side of the board. On a player's turn, they may either activate one of their 6 wedges on the action wheel or upgrade a wedge. To take an action, players count the number of action tokens on the wedge and apply that many action points to the action they wish to take. For example, this travel wedge has 2 action tokens, allowing the player to move their knights a total of 2 spaces. Some buildings give additional action points, like building the second castle here would give an additional travel action point every time the travel action was taken. Once the action is taken, the action points are distributed one at a time in a clockwise order, like this. However, certain knightly orders may change this, such as the Teutonic Knights, who instead of going clockwise, may choose to go counterclockwise in their distribution. A player may also upgrade a wedge, allowing them to flip a wedge to show not one, but two action options, like this travel and build, and redistribute a different wedge's action points. An upgraded wedge allows a player to perform up to two actions with the same wedge on a turn, but the first action must be completed prior to performing the second. A second action may only be taken if there is at least one action token available, even if building bonuses shown would meet the requirements. There are 5 actions in the wedges that players can take. Travel allows players to move a number of spaces equal to the number of action points. Influence simply gives that number of points directly from the influence pool to the player. Build provides a build value to construct buildings on an empty hex. There cannot be an enemy or another building on this location. Each building has a cost shown here in the hex on the board. Also, remember to check building bonus tiles on a hex to determine if certain building types cost less or provide additional influence. So when a building is built, they would also gain these points. Each building not only provides immediate influence, but they also give bonuses for other actions later in the game. The muster action allows players to gain additional crusading power by flipping over in order one of the troop icons. This will provide a future crusade bonus whenever the crusade action is taken. The crusade action is what allows players to take on enemy tokens on a space with one of their knights. The required action point value depends on the type of enemy. The Prussians and Slavs both begin at a strength of 3. With each token defeated by a player, they take influence equal to the current strength and then increase the strength along the track located on the right side of the board. The Saracens always count as a strength of 6. A player, once defeating a Saracen token, can choose either to construct the building or troop shown on that token and gain the points as if they built or mustered, or they may simply take the token along with 3 influence points. In all cases, players should keep the defeated enemy tokens near their player boards for end-of-game scoring. The game ends when the last of the available influence tokens is taken. Players will get the same number of turns, so it'll go back around to the first player, and then the game will officially end. Players with the most of each enemy type defeated take the tile as indicated here, and the player with the second most will take the second tile shown below. In the case of a tie, the second tile is removed, and the first tile is flipped over, with each player sharing in the number of points that tied for first place. After counting up influence points, the player with the most points is the winner. While in college, I took quite a few courses on medieval Europe, and specifically religion and the Crusades. I found the events, motivations, outcomes of the nearly 400 years of military conquest throughout Europe and the Mediterranean region quite fascinating. That said, Crusaders is not a historical game based on the politics or military actions of the Crusades, but rather an area control game placed over the theme of the Crusades. That being said, I do enjoy that the game is not specifically about the Crusades, but instead about the knightly orders themselves that rose in response to a new market of religious travelers. In all the games I've played, the end totals were close, with games often being decided by a handful of choices right at the end. The random starting locations of enemy tokens, building bonuses, and the action wedge order makes each game unique and forces players to adjust their strategy between games, since some actions may fall in different orders. The different knightly order abilities also allow a change in strategy, though I do not know how balanced each order is against the others, as I haven't played enough to simply compare each, but so far I haven't found any outright runaway powers. The unique Mancala action wheel creates interesting choices each turn, not only to decide what actions you can perform based on their action point cost and what is available, but also what actions will spread those same action points to a wedge that a player really wants to use. coupled with the option to forego an action to upgrade a wedge and redistribute action points from anywhere, I felt as I didn't have a turn without a meaningful choice. The in-game timer based on remaining influence tokens makes careful decisions in the last few rounds as players look at all possible choices to either maximize their final influence, resulting in some excitement in the final rounds as they try to outmaneuver opponents, either to end the game quickly before they can snag those few extra points or take the prize that opponent was trying to achieve. Overall, Crusaders is a fantastic game that I look forward to getting to the table more often. It scales very well from 2 to 4 players, which is assisted with that double-sided map and different starting numbers of influence tokens. If you'd like to see more of how the game plays directly, you can check out our Let's Play video of the game, which I'll link in this video below. And on a side note, if you'd like to learn a little more about the historical Crusades, I'll include a list of some recommended books that I think would be useful for anyone who's just wanting to learn a little more. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.